Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Adel Ghafar. I'm the Director of the Foreign Policy and Security Program at the Middle East Council on Global Affairs. I'd like to welcome you to tonight's panel. First, I'd like to invite His Excellency Ambassador Maeda for his welcoming comments. Please, Ambassador Maeda.
Thank you very much for your warm introduction, Dr. Adel. Distinguished guests, fellow speakers, ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure and honor to be here tonight, and I thank all of you for taking the time to join us. I myself am thrilled to listen to the discussion by the wonderful panel we have today, which I think the best lineup to learn about the past, present, and the future of our important relationship between Japan and Gulf countries. Indeed, Japan's need for energy security has long driven relations with the Gulf states. More than 90% of our oil demand is coming from the Gulf states, natural gas demand as well, which is led by Qatar. Thus, the Gulf countries are the important energy supplier to Japan, and energy sector remains a major contributor to Japan's trade with Gulf Arab states. However, our relationship is diversifying. Engagement in non-oil sectors is increasing due to the emphasis of economic diversification programs in the Gulf states, and their reliance on hydrocarbon revenue is reducing. At the same time, I often hear directly from the local people that Gulf countries are shifting more toward east. We, Japan, should be the front runner to welcome this dynamism of the Gulf's Look East policy. Japan GCC relationship has expanded to include collaboration in sectors including investments, science and technology, environment, education, tourism, and security. There is a huge potential for both sides to greatly benefit by combining the strengths of both GCC and Japan, and that we should strengthen the partnership. On the occasion of Prime Minister Kishida's visit to the region in July last year, both sides concurred on resuming negotiations for Japan GCC FTA by the end of 2024. In addition, it has been decided to have regular convening of the Japan GCC Foreign Ministers meeting, the first of which has been realized in September last year in Riyadh, and the Japan GCC Action Plan 2024 to 2028 has been formulated. The role of GCC members in various fields in the international arena, including politics and conflict resolution, is also becoming increasingly important, and that Japan attached importance to cooperation with the GCC in addressing various challenges the world and the region are facing. Japan is committed to working with the GCC members and the international community with a strong determination to uphold the international order based on the rule of law. Well, with these considerations in mind, I'd like to expect that the outcome of today's discussion will shed light in the way of strengthening our future cooperation with GCC countries. Lastly, but not least, I would like to thank the Middle East Council on Global Affairs for its great organization and arrangement in holding this event. I'm sure that we will be many takeaways tonight, and I'm eager to learn, like many of you, from the insightful discussion today. Thank you.
Okay, please. Okay. Take a few minutes. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to tonight's panel, Japan and the GCC towards a comprehensive partnership. Before we jump in, I would definitely like to thank our colleagues at the Japanese Embassy, who are really great to work with, and His Excellency Ambassador Maeda and his team and his staff for the excellent collaboration. This is part of a series of collaborations we have with Japan, including last year with Waseda University and other Japanese institutions, and it's a pleasure to collaborate with the embassy and wish them, of course, a happy National Day that they celebrated this week. So, Japan and the GCC share historic ties spanning decades. Since the establishment of formal diplomatic relations with Japan during the 1970s, the relationship has been marked by extensive cooperation and a shared commitment towards shared prosperity of both sides. Given Japan's energy-intensive economy, the GCC has historically been a key partner. But as the ambassador said, over the years, cooperation has evolved beyond energy to include multiple sectors, including infrastructure, technology, education, renewables, amongst others. Global efforts underway to accelerate the energy transition will increasingly center Japan as an important partner for the GCC, with Japanese technology powering the emerging shift towards renewable energy. As the ambassador said as well, Prime Minister Kishida's visit to Saudi, the UAE, and Qatar last year really cemented Japan's role as an important partner in the GCC's energy transition. And while Japan and the GCC share very robust economic ties, these ties have also grown to encompass political and security ties as well. Both Japan and the GCC significantly contribute to global humanitarian and development efforts, and both have also historically supported Palestine as well, which we will discuss in our panel today. From the Gulf side, the Gulf states were quickly to respond to the devastating 2011 earthquake and tsunami, supporting relief efforts in Japan as well. The region's complex geopolitical landscape, coupled with pivot towards harnessing stronger relations with Asian powers, makes Japan an indispensable ally and friend to GCC countries across. So, what are Japan's strategic objectives in the region? What are their history? What are their deepest ties? And what are their trajectory? Are some of the questions we want to tackle in today's panel. And to tackle these questions, we have assembled an excellent panel for you. To my left, Kana Sato, who is a senior researcher at the JIME Center, Institute of Energy Economics in Japan. Previously, she was a researcher for JBIC Representative Office in Dubai. Her research focuses on the geoeconomics of the GCC and Iran. She draws on extensive political negotiation experience, and she was part of the administration's overhauling of prior to the Trump administration's overhauling of the JCPOA. She participated in the negotiations between Iran and financial entities. Kana-san also traveled the farthest tonight. So Kani-san came from Dubai, and Professor Baabood came from Oman. But Kana-san came all the way from Tokyo. So thank you so much for being with us today. To our left, Kitamura-san is the chief representative for the JBIC, Japan Bank for International Cooperation, where he covers 16 countries ranging from the Gulf to Pakistan and Egypt. Prior, Kitamura-san was involved in facilitating the financing of various independent power producers and independent water power plants projects across the region, including in Qatar, Morocco, and Egypt. And we look forward to hearing more about JBIC's work in the region. Last but not least, my dear friend and colleague, Professor Abdullah Baabood, who is the chair of the State of Qatar for Islamic Area Studies at Waseda University. Previously, he was here with us in Doha, a valued colleague and friend at Qatar University as the head of the Gulf Studies there. So welcome everyone, and please, Kana-san, we'll start with your introductory comments. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Adel, for your kind introduction.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for the organizer, Middle East Council on Global Affairs, for having me here. As Dr. Adel has kindly introduced, my name is Kana Sato, a senior researcher at JIME Center. JIME is an abbreviation for Japan Institute of Middle East Economies, within the Institute of Energy Economics, Japan. So today I will primarily focus on the economic relation between the GCC and Japan. For its tracing back its evolution and consolidation, as well as the expansion, while touching upon a bit of perspective or the outlook as well in the last. My speech will be structured around three pillars: energy, infrastructure, and industries. As a first pillar, the energy. The economic ties between the GCC and Japan trace back to 1934, when the first oil shipment came from Bahrain to Japan. And this significance of this event lies in symbolic two perspective. So for Japan, it was the very first oil from GCC, and for GCC countries, it was the first oil that was shipped outside from its territory. And it's also noteworthy that this transaction was done by the Japanese private company. The name is Nihon Sekiyu, meaning Japan Oil, and it was rather than the governmental entity. And this development coincided with the enactment of Japan's petroleum industry law amid the regulating oil prices and imports. At the same time, those days the oil industry was predominantly controlled by the European or the US measures. So the Japanese government sought to bolster and safeguard the oil industry of Japan those days. And within that law, oil companies were mandated to maintain reserves equivalent to 6 months of their supply those days. It fitted that major companies could not accomplish, but Japanese company could meet the goal, largely facilitated by the oil from the Gulf, which I mentioned earlier, the Bahraini oil. And additionally, it's crucial to acknowledge the historical significance of the pearl in the economic relation between Gulf and the Japan. In the early 20th century, pearl cultivation was the major industry in the region until it was disrupted by the Japanese pearl farming, which is namely as Mikimoto. And this disruption prompted the Gulf to seek alternative economic avenues, ultimately leading to the emergence of oil and gas cornerstone as its industry. So unfortunately, during World War II, the ties between Japan and Gulf countries were temporarily severed. However, then it was reconnected in the 1950s when the Japan's economic recovery was happening. So faced with the significant demand of the energy in Japan, the Japanese government sought to secure the stable supply of oil and gas, especially the oil, resulting in acquisition of the oil concession in the Gulf Arab states. And the first of such agreement was with Saudi Arabia in 1957, followed by Kuwait in 1959, and then Abu Dhabi in 1967, which was even before the establishment of UAE. And this collaboration effort led to substantial increase of the Japanese oil imports from the Middle East, and the dependence was as much as 75% in the early 1970s. However, the oil crisis of 1973, triggered by the oil embargo during the Fourth Middle East War, underscored the Japanese vulnerability of the energy security. And despite the significant contribution to oil industry in the region, the Gulf over the preceding years, there was uncertainty within Japanese community whether the Gulf country will continue exporting oil to Japan, having the relation with the US and Israel. And regrettably, those days, Japan wasn't perceived as the friendly country that time, and this realization prompted Japan to reassess its energy policy and also enhance the relationship with the Arab states. Also, it has initiated training programs for the Middle East experts. And the establishment of our Middle East Economic Research Institute in 1974, which is a predecessor of JIME Center, is the example for the efforts from the Japanese government on those days. And before I proceed further, I would like to take a moment to express my condolences to the victims and the families affected by the recent incident in Gaza. And also I would like to extend my deepest sympathy to those enduring the ongoing turmoil. Now, while Japan's oil import have decreased by 40% from its peak of 290 million kiloliters per year to the current 158 million, our dependence on the Middle East has reached a record high, as Dr. Adel mentioned, or His Excellency might also mention that the oil dependence to the Middle East has reached 90% at this moment. And also the overall import volume of Japan itself has decreased. The dependence and the volume itself, the oil volume itself from the Middle East remains substantial volume, especially from Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi, and partially from Kuwait and Qatar as well. And in terms of the natural gas, the Qatar, of course, has been amongst the top 5 exporter to Japan over the 2 decades. And the first shipment of LNG from Qatar was to Japan. So the relation on that gas field between Japan and Qatar is also something that I would like to put an emphasis on. And I also would like to express my congratulations to the Qatar Petroleum for its establishment of 50 years. Yesterday I went to the National Museum and saw that the Qatar Petroleum was established in 1974. So this year remarks 50 years. And coming back to the relation with Japan, following the 2011 earthquake in Japan, Japan was facing the energy deficiency, but thanks to the Qatar's government's kind, generous allocation of the natural gas, it played a crucial role in the Japanese stable energy supply. Due to its suspension of the nuclear power plant, and Qatar emerged as the largest, the number 1 energy gas supplier in terms of the value in 2012 and 2013, according to the custom statistics of Japan. And these historical insights provide a foundation for understanding the long-standing relationship between the Gulf and Japan. And now I would like to pivot to the second pillar, which is infrastructure. The instance of Japan's involvement of the infrastructure in Gulf dates back to 1960s, which is a grand design of Abu Dhabi. Actually, it was eventually developed by the Egyptian architect, but the very first grand design was designed by the Japanese architect, Mr. Takahashi. And not only that was the old example, but moreover, Japanese companies have contributed in the lots of infrastructure projects across the Gulf, including the construction of Doha Metro, which I also had enjoyed a ride yesterday. And when it comes to the metro, Dubai Metro was also developed by the Japanese company. And also, when it comes to the high-end technology, the special technology of the glass fiber for the roof of the King Abdulaziz airport in Jeddah was provided by the Japanese company as well. And furthermore, Japanese company has played a pivotal role in energy generation and water desalination project across the region. Approximately 35% of the electricity generated in the Gulf countries as of 2022 is produced by the plant which has the Japanese investments in, and which is totaling around 44,000 megawatt it's indispensable contribution to the power sector of the region, I believe. And it's also worth noting that the Japanese automobile have also become ubiquitous in this Gulf, serving it's kind of like a micro infrastructure that supports both daily and also the wholesale logistics as well. And through collaboration, efforts in oil and gas, infrastructure development, as well as electronics trade, Japan emerged as the largest Asian trading partner to the region until 2008. However, in recent years, China, India, and also a coalition of ASEAN countries has surpassed. And as mentioned by His Excellency Ambassador Maeda, following the Prime Minister Kishida's visit to the region, the negotiation for the FTA has been revitalized, and with the aim of boosting the investment as well as the trade between the GCC and Japan. So now let's move on to the third pillar, industry. Japan has been actively collaborated and engaged in various industries and also to foster the diversification of economies in the region. Notable examples are the petrochemical project in Saudi Arabia or the metal, steel or aluminum project in the region as well. Also, we cannot forget about the Japanese financial institutions emergence in the region as well. Until 2021, according to the rankings of one of the financial institutions, Information Institute, Japan's three major banks, which we call it mega banks, was consistently ranked within the top 10 for the project financing as well as infrastructure financing in the MENA region. And this success can be attributed in part of the support of governmental financial institutions such as JBIC and NEXI. And while GCC countries prioritize the intergovernment dialogue, the presence of these financial institution, not only financial institution, but the governmental institution has had a very important role of Japanese private sector to participating in the project across the region. Unfortunately, due to according to the recent statistics, 2023, the ranking has, the Japanese financial institution ranking has fell down, but which is a good news for the locals because the local banks and funding, the funds has been ranked in the top 10 and it has increased the presence within the region. So, which is a good news for the region, but I believe, hope there is a chance for more Japanese financial institutions to participate in the project here in the region as well in the future. So, looking ahead, we anticipate enhanced collaboration in emerging areas related to the energy transition, including hydrogen, ammonia, sustainable aviation fuels, or other low-carbon projects. Given the inherent uncertainties and the risks associated with these endeavors, strong support from both the local government as well as the implementing countries such as Japan, as well as the robust participation from the private sector is crucial. And during ongoing energy transition, there are strong voices from Western countries, especially Europe, to call for a swift shift towards green or renewable energy. On the other hand, there are places or the countries where securing a stable and affordable energy is their priority. And also in Japan, there are challenges to realize the green or renewable energies due to the location. There is constraints in the location allocation for renewables in Japan. So in such circumstances, it's necessary to rationally consider the importance of gas and also what is commonly referred as a blue energy. because Japan, being the presidency of G7 last year, successfully collaborated with the UAE, the chair of the COP28 last year, to advocate for industry and diversified pathways towards the energy transition. And furthermore, I believe that Japan and GCC were the countries which continues to hold the very significant responsibility for the global hydrocarbon supply. And we hope that we can collaborate or cooperate in realizing the realistic pathways towards the energy transition, especially creating the market as well as the standards across the Asian countries. So with this in mind, I would like to pass the mic to Mr. Kitamura. I firmly believe that the continued support from the government sector would be crucial. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Kana-san, for your comments. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Very, very comprehensive on the history of the GCC and its trajectory, and I really appreciate as well that you've highlighted the automotive sector, which we didn't mention in my initial comments. And here in Doha, at any traffic stop, you look on the right, you'll find the Land Cruiser. You look on the left, you'll find the Nissan Patrol. So automotive is another huge sector here, of course. Now we'd like to also shift to Kenny-san, understand more, Japan's soft power and contribution to the development of the region. The floor is yours, Kenny-san.
Thank you, Dr. Adel. Your Excellency, Ambassador Maeda, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. This is Kenny Kitamura from Japan Banco International Corporation. Japan Banco International Corporation is a Japanese governmental financial institutions supporting Japanese businesses overseas. And on top of the very kind introduction by Dr. Adel, I'd like to mention only one thing about myself. I'm a big football fan. And as such, I would like to start my session by congratulating my friends from Qatar on winning Asian Football Cup earlier this month. And that was, for me personally, that was a bitter experience as a Japanese. But we learned a lesson, and I hope we will perform better, and looking forward to the next opportunity. And for me, Doha is a very special place. At the age of 13, that was the first time I heard the name Doha, when Japan was disqualified for the FIFA World Cup 1994. And since then, for me, the country of GCC is somewhat a kind of mystery, because every time our team faced the team from GCC, they struggle. They struggled a lot. They couldn't win the game against Saudi, UAE, Oman, Jordan. We had many bitter memories. However, that bitter memory was clearly replaced by the sweet memory in 2022, when we won the games against Germany and Spain. That was largely due to the great performance of our other Asian friends, like Saudi, Qatar, and their performance clearly inspired our team. If they can do it, why not us? We have been playing with them for many occasions. And Qatar, Saudi, they made us stronger. Why not us can win the game against Spain and Germany? And that was the mindset of our team, I believe. So, since the bitter memory of 1993, we engaged many times, and we became stronger and better together. And that was not only in the sports. I believe that was also true in economic sense, economic field as well. 1996 was the year when Japan first imported the LNG from Qatar. And as you all know, LNG has been a driving force of the economic development of Qatar. And we, Japan, have been closely engaging with the Qatari partners in developing this crucial sector. Many LNG plants have been constructed by Japanese companies. And many Japanese trading houses invested their equity into those huge energy development. And our financing supported their investment, of course. And the strong partnership does not limited to the energy sector. As Kana-san mentioned, infrastructure. I calculated some numbers. I'm not good at numbers, I have to say, but I summed up some numbers. There are 4 power plants invested by Japanese companies. In total, the production capacity, electricity generation capacity, is more than 8 gigawatt, which is equal to more than 50% of the electricity supply of Qatar. So in a sense, more than 50% of the electricity is somewhat provided by Japanese company, including the solar power plant. And those projects are supported by our financing. And I'm very proud to be a part of this kind of great journey. And this great journey does not end within Qatar. We have a joint project in overseas as well. There is one solar power plant in Jordan, jointly invested by Nebras Power and Mitsubishi Corporation. That was in year 2015, and this was supported by our financing. And in 2023, there is another gas-fired power plant, jointly invested by, again, Nebras Power and Japanese company Sojitz Corporation. So we have successfully expanded our cooperation or success story into other countries as well. And I believe that this kind of, how to say, success story is a key for our future and key for the close relationship between Japan and GCC. Why? The Qatar is not the only example. Although Qatar is a very good example or a very condensed or consolidated example of how Japan and GCC can work together, if we look at Saudi, UAE, Oman, we do have a similar experience. We develop energy together, develop infrastructure together, and create the economic driver for the economic sustainable development of both Japan and the countries in GCC. This is the close relationship we have successfully created. And looking ahead for the future, as Your Excellency Ambassador might have mentioned, we are at the turning point of energy transition. In COP28 last year, there was a UAE consensus adopted at the end of the session. And there are so many comments on the UAE consensus, but I personally believe that the UAE consensus strikes a very good balance in a very delicate and sensitive issue of minimizing emission and maximizing energy. Why? Yes, we all understand that this planet is getting warmer, warmer, warmer. And we have to do something to do it. But at the same time, we have to face the reality, which is in this world, there are certain amount of people, decent amount of people who don't have even an access to electricity or energy. We also have to address this huge problem as well. And these are, how to say, very, very difficult task to manage. However, the UAE consensus clearly mentioned that there must be a transition to the energy in an orderly, just manner. So as Kana-san mentioned, it doesn't say that we have to transition at this moment, now. We need to take a pathway, realistic pathway, to make sure that affordable energy is there, energy security is there. That is the core of the UAE consensus, I believe. And again, last year, our Prime Minister Kishida visited countries in this region. What he said, what I understand is that we have been closely working together in how to say bilateral cooperation, meaning we import energy and we provide the critical technology and money to develop this sector. However, we'd like to enhance this relation to the multilateral relationship, meaning we would like to work with the countries in GCC to provide to the other parts of the world. What we provide is that the goods and services that other countries want. If we look back, the LNG, in the case of Qatar, LNG has been a cornerstone of our relationship. Why? Because every country needs gas, energy. So that's we together developed it and provided it. So looking ahead, if we can produce and provide the goods and services that other countries need, then that would be a strong driver for the bilateral or multilateral cooperation and sustainable economic development of Qatar, Japan, and for other countries as well. And in my view, one of the key product or services that other countries want in coming decades is the goods and services to decarbonize the society and the industry. And the Qatar is in a very good position to be one of the core provider of those goods and services or materials that is key for decarbonizing the society and industry. And on that front, we, JBIC, and other Japanese partners are keen to work with the players in GCC, not only in Qatar, but in other GCC countries like UAE, Saudi, Oman. So this is the future or the suggestion I'd like to make through this session. And finally, but not the least, I'd like to briefly touch upon the humanitarian aid that the Japanese government is undertaking. Yesterday, our foreign minister, Ms. Kamikawa, announced that they will launch another humanitarian aid of $32 million for the humanitarian issues in Gaza. This is in addition to the $10 million that was announced and fully disbursed in October last year. And our sister agency, JICA, Japan International Cooperation Agency, is working very hard with the Egyptian government to support the humanitarian activities, not only providing the money, but also providing the humanitarian goods and services, and also reinforce the health and hospital capacity to address the humanitarian issues in Gaza. So in terms of the soft power, yes, as a financial institution, we did the money or the financial side of the soft power, but that is only as one part of the soft power Japanese government is exercising. So the humanitarian aid is another one. Also the exchange of know-how and the communication is another one. So my final message is that Japan is here to engage with GCC countries, and I personally became stronger and better, I believe, by engaging with the countries in GCC. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Kenny-san, and you've definitely added another layer after Kana-san's presentation on Japan's engagement with the region with a focus on infrastructure, as well as all of the efforts for decarbonization. And I also appreciate you illuminating the role of other institutions that play a role, such as JICA in terms of humanitarian aid and development in the region. I remember growing up in Cairo and seeing lots of the school buses were gifts from the Japanese government. I always remember seeing this on the side of a bus, and of course Japan's contribution to the Opera House in Cairo, as well as the the National Museum as well. So thank you for your comments. Professor Baabood, now we've spoken about lots of the economic and ties. It's time to talk about some of the political and security relations. How has Japan contributed to regional security and stability? What are the perceptions of Japan in the region, especially at this very critical moment with the ongoing genocide in Gaza? And how can Japan contribute in the future towards more peace in our region? Please, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everybody, Your Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you, Adel. Thank you, Middle East Council, for this kind invitation. Of course, the Japanese embassy being instrumental in supporting this kind of relationship, and the Middle East Council has been doing a great job in terms of building the relationship between the Middle East and the rest of the world, but particularly in your case, Adel, more focused on Asia. My name is Abdullah Baabood, and so you can tell from my headgear, I come from Oman, but my position is the chair of the State of Qatar in Islamic Area Studies at Waseda University. What a connection. Oman, Qatar, Waseda University, Islamic Area Studies. I think this is an indication of the way things are going to happen in the future. An indication of where the Middle East was neglected for some time by many powers around the world, and also Asia was neglected for many reasons in the past. And this neglect came from the reason that the region was colonized, and colonial power decided the mood of the relationships and how they should be. Now things have changed. We are refinding each other. We are trying to reconnect with each other. The chair for Qatar in Islamic Area Studies at Waseda University is basically one of the few examples that is trying to develop this kind of relationship and to take it to a different level. And we're collaborating with many institutions, whether it is in Japan, IEEJ, and other institutions, and we are collaborating with institutions in the Middle East, in Qatar, with the Middle East Council. We just did a very interesting workshop here in Doha and in Japan, published a dossier which you can find outside. So the relationship is becoming much more deeper. And of course, it is built on what was initially suggested: oil, gas, energy needs of Japan. Japan is, of course, a resource-poor country in one sense. And the region here, the Gulf and the Middle East in general, is a resource-rich country. And logically, the two should connect. But that connection has, has been described. It's been built on, mutual trade exchange, investments, collaboration, etc., etc. And of course, Japan being one of the top industrial countries in the world, in the top 4, part of the G7, G20. It makes sense for the region to have a relationship with this very important country. And that relationship is actually much deeper than what people see. And I think it goes down to the fact that the Japanese themselves are very humble to talk about their achievements and what they do. And also we have in the region been focusing more on the Western countries and other powers, while we have not really given a lot of attention to Japan. However, things are changing. There are global changes taking place. There are geostrategic changes that are taking place. We are seeing but perhaps a world that is becoming more multipolar than it was before. We're seeing the rise of Asia as another node, if you like, in international politics. We're seeing huge changes in energy geopolitics, where the energy is shifting now, our energy needs are shifting from Europe, North America, etc., towards Asia. The Gulf states, the Middle East is more connected now with Asia because of energy. We're seeing more investments, more trade, culture. A lot of cultural exchange that are taking place. I mean, the Qatar chair is one of them, but you talk to any little kid in the Gulf and they'll tell you about, the Japanese and the Korean and, all the Asian cultures that they celebrate and they love. They know it more than us, our generation. So things are changing, and I want to get back to your question with this background to say that this change, this economic basis that has been described by the previous speakers and colleagues is also, doesn't come in isolation from geopolitical links. You can't just have economic relations, you can't just have investment relations without considering the geopolitics. And you think, Your Excellency, Adel, you've mentioned that there's a talk about pivoting towards the east. Of course, this is a US policy, but it's also been considered as a Middle Eastern policy. Some Middle Eastern countries are talking about pivoting towards the east. And the question that comes to my mind straight away is, what do they mean? What is the east? Is that China? Is it Japan? Is it Korea? Is it India? How are they pivoting towards? The Middle East and Japan are basically one country and a region that have strong connection with the West. And they're all good friends and have strategic relationship with the United States. Obviously, there are some countries that they don't, but in general, that is the case. So are they going to pivot towards China at the expense of their relationship with the West, or are they going to tilt more towards allies of the United States in the West? And that's particularly, in this case, Japan and other countries in the West and in the East that are within the US. So this is going to be a very important thing to consider. And of course, you take into consideration the competition from China that is now, through the Belt and Road Initiative, that is now also building roads into the region. And when you talk about competition within China, one has to take into consideration it's not just geopolitics, it's geoenergy. Most of the energy now from the Gulf is actually going to China. So, we need to also take that into consideration as well. Of course, for Japan, the Gulf states is very important, but also for the Gulf state, China is also another important country to export to. How do the Gulf states manage to play and to differentiate their relationship, especially given the situation in the Indo-Pacific, given the U.S.-China conflict, given the Japanese-China conflict? So all these conflicts within the Indo-Pacific can also reverberate here, and we have to understand them more. We have to study them more to be able to have good relationship with all our friends there without having to hurt anyone or to upset any of our allies. So now, Japan has historically had very interesting relationship with the Middle East. It's quite diplomacy, very smart diplomacy. going at, soft power, economic investments, humanitarian support that Japan has been doing. And it's been under the radar for many years. Nobody, talks about Japan in any political situation. However, we are also witnessing here in the Middle East a major shift. The Gaza war is actually changing the perception in many ways. Who is with who and who's standing with who? Where is Japan standing in this? Is a very interesting concept. I don't know if you guys, ladies and gentlemen, you followed what was going on, but when the war started, Japan was quiet. Japan has always been closer or in a neutral position towards Middle Eastern conflict. Either neutral or closer to the Arab stand in many issues. And that was appreciated by many people here in the Middle East. But when the Gaza war started, Japan was quiet for a little while, for a few days. And everybody was asking, where is Japan in this situation? And then, of course, the Security Council resolution came, and Japan voted with the other side. At least this is how they saw it. And there was a lot of anger in the Middle East. How could Japan do this? This is our friend. We have good relationship with Japan and strategic relationship, etc. However, if you dig deep in, Japan is obviously read the situation in the Middle East. Not all the Arab countries are in one position, and they are not all supporting the Palestinians, unfortunately, to say that. And there are conflicts between the Arab countries, and some Arab countries are even, they went so far as attacking Hamas, and in that sense, the Palestinians as well. And and maybe the Japanese got the message that not all Arab countries are in one position, and they had to be careful, and they have to also balance their relationship with the United States and their allies. So that's how the vote went in the first place. But subsequent votes started to change because of the dynamics of the war in Gaza and the internal dynamics also in Japan, the demonstration, etc. And Japan started to tilt more towards neutrality, if not pro-Arab position, calling for a ceasefire, implementing international resolutions, and trying to resolve the conflict through peaceful negotiations and two-state solutions, etc. So Japan has been challenged by this war, and its position and its view of the region has been challenged. Despite the deep relationship that's been discussed, politics sometimes can create another dimension, another lens to look through it. And now, we have to take into consideration that Japan has always tried to stay away from conflicts in the region. They tried to support, whether it was, the Iran-Iraq war, they tried to stay away, they tried to kind of just trying to get them to negotiate, trying to have peace, whether it was the conflict between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Japan has tried to keep good relationship with both sides, and I think they were a little bit envious in Japan that they did not broker this, and China went ahead and did it. And Japan should have rightly been, in the forefront of this because of, their very quiet diplomacy that they do, and the peaceful vision of Japan. Japan also, because of its constitution, has a limitation in terms of what it can do in terms of military presence in the Middle East, and of course its energy security is being challenged because of the conflicts in the war, etc. So it had to take some stance, and we've seen that Japan now is becoming quite active, especially when one of its ships was taken hostage or attacked by the Houthis. So they started to talk to Ansar Allah, the Houthis, as well, trying to resolve this conflict. Japan has started to build some presence in the region, whether it is in the Gulf region, in the Indian Ocean and the Red Sea and the Horn of Africa, to protect its own interest, whether, and particularly its security, its energy security, which is very important. But it still tries to stay away from being thrown into the camp of the West. So, for example, it did not join any of the US coalitions that was built in the Gulf states. Initially, if you remember, there was a US coalition that was built to protect the navigation in the Gulf. And they did not even join the recent one that was created against the Houthis in the Red Sea, and they started to act independent. How far will Japan continue to be independent with this? It's a very interesting thing to watch, but I think they will go a long way in terms of determining their own independent foreign policy. We know there is nothing independent in this world. One day you have to go with one direction or the other, or depending on the situation. But as far as Japan is trying to do, is trying to be create an independent policy towards the Middle East. It's trying to protect its own interest in the region, and it's explained by previous speakers, mainly its energy security, especially given the fact that 90% of their energy is coming from this region. So the security of this region is of utmost importance to Japan. Now, it comes to what the Gulf states want. The Gulf states are talking bilaterally to Japan, and they are going for some comprehensive agreements and negotiations at that level, but also they are conducting a collective negotiation through the GCC. The GCC Cooperation Council, having recovered from the conflict, the internal conflict it had, is now talking to Japan, and with the view of establishing a free trade agreement. That negotiation has taken place a long time ago, but it was stopped and now being reinvigorated again, and hopefully there will be a Japan GCC free trade agreement, which we look forward to enhancing cooperation between the beautiful country of Japan and the nice people in Japan, and also not only the GCC, but the whole Middle East. Mm-hmm. And with that, I will end, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Professor Baabood. Thank you very much, and thank you for also adding another layer, which is the geopolitical context, which is very important, which goes with the economic component as well, and highlighting the view from Japan, also in terms of how energy security is connected to maritime security, and we've clearly seen that in the current conflict when it comes to the Red Sea and shipping lanes and so on. And also, you highlighted debates happening currently within Japan in terms of changing of constitution and adaptability and being further involved in security of course, the Indo-Pacific, but of course our region here. We will soon open up to questions from the audience, so please prepare your questions, but I want first to ask our speakers who closely follow the relationship between Japan and the GCC, if each of you had to name one challenge for the next decade in the relationship and tell us how it could potentially be overcome, that would be great. Just one challenge before we open to the audience.
Okay,
please.
Thank you, Dr. Adel. I believe the challenges that we are facing is the generation changes. Because the current relationship, the strong relationship between the GCC countries and Japan has been built through the collaboration in the last decades, which were mainly established through our senior generations, and our new generations are shifting towards the new economic situation, also including the energy transition. So, it is often said that the Z generation is kind of passive, but within that in mind, I believe that even with that, spirit or the mindset is having within the specific generation, we need to go on for the further collaboration. So the generation changing is one key or the challenges that we are facing, and I believe we have the positive sign, especially mentioned by Dr. Abdullah, that the cultural exchange is possible these days through the SNS and the internet, and you mentioned that the Korean and the Japanese cultures are much appreciated within the young generation in the Gulf countries. So that is one hope, and we hope to, that's the challenge.
Thank you, Kana-san. And of course, the generation change component is important. And Professor Baabood is playing a role in that regard, of course, teaching in Waseda University the next generation of Middle East focused analysts and experts as well. Kenny-san, what are your thoughts?
Yes, I think the key challenge is how to reinforce our soft power. Every time I meet someone and I tell him or her, I'm from Japan, their eye open like this. Wow, you're from Japan. The reason for their reaction is maybe from the Japanese culture or any other encounter with Japan. But I'm sure they also associate the Japan with the high quality and smart people and harmony. And we have to reinforce. And we are now, enjoying the legacy created by past generation. But I feel obliged to reinforce this kind of soft power at my age. That is the key challenge, I personally feel, and I think that is also true for the country. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Kenny-san. Yeah, the reinforcement of soft power. There are lots of achievements in the background, but sometimes people don't know about them or they're not perceived in the region. Professor Baabood.
I totally concur with what has been said, and I think given the fact that there is, of course, a shift towards the east from this region, and there is more dependence from the east towards this region. I think there is a great opportunity that has not been utilized, and I don't think that soft power, that connectivity, the cultural connectivity has been utilized from both sides. And I think that's something that needs to be looked at. But if there is one challenge to this relationship, I would say from a geopolitical angle that I kind of had been asked to talk about, I think if there was a conflict in the Indo-Pacific, what's going to happen if China was to take over Taiwan? Where is Japan going to be in this? Where are the Gulf states and the Middle Eastern countries going to be in this? I think that's going to be a real challenge to the relationship, given that, of course, the whole geopolitical system is in a state of flux at the moment. And I think that is, in my opinion, that's one of the, from a geopolitical strategic issue, that's going to be a major challenge to both.
That's a great point and very critical. And as we've seen, of course, with the conflict in Ukraine and Russia, how the region here was divided and how things would play out. A conflict in Taiwan would add a whole other layer of complexity to some of these existing relationships. So thank you for your input. We now open to our audience for comments, questions. Please raise your hand and introduce yourself, and one of the colleagues will get a mic. Please, gentleman here at the front first. Yes, coming your way.
Good evening. My name is Saeed. I am from Oman. I'm a PhD student at Qatar University. Thank you very much for the thrilling information and the presentation. Outstanding, good insight about the relationship between Japan and the GCC. I have two parts question. The first question is, how does Japan anticipate the the changing regional politics within the GCC and the gradual shift to the east, especially that we have seen recently the increasing involvement of other powers, excuse me, of other powers in the region, like China and Russia. And the second part is, how does Japan respond? Or the leading thing to the second question is, it looks like the energy is the thing or the element that cements the Japanese GCC relationship. So how does Japan respond to the also changing energy geopolitics, especially that the GCC countries at the moment are pushing hard for greater economic diversification away from the oil-based economy? Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. So 2 questions, one economic, one political. I'll give it to the panel. You can choose to do both or one. Please, Kana.
Thank you very much for your question. So for the political shift in the Gulf countries or the region, Mr. Abdullah also mentioned that the China was mediating the reapproachment between Saudi and Iran, that maybe Japan could have participated or could play a role in it. Unfortunately, we could not. However, well, this was, I believe there is 2 reasons. One is that this agreement had to have the guarantee or had to have the basis of their reapproachment. One is economic and one is geopolitical. And with the Chinese, the presence rising in the Middle East, especially on the oil imports from Iran, they had a leverage to pressure Iran to secure the regional safety, especially the Straits of Hormuz and the region stability. And that also includes the geopolitical situation as well. But I was actually in Tehran 2 weeks ago, and I saw the new embassy in Tehran, which was in the Espenas Palace Hotel, one of the luxurious hotel north side of Tehran. And there was of course, Saudi diplomat there. It seems to be kind of as long as the place, it did represent the relationship between the two, because most of the embassies is not in those luxurious hotel, but those are bases in the kind of the houses or the diplomatic areas. But anyway, the things are moving on, and one thing that I would like to keep in mind is that the critical mineral issues that Chinese is dominating. So the region is moving towards the EV, especially the battery EVs. But if you are going to the battery EVs, then the dependence on the lithium or the critical minerals will increase, and that will make the dependence on the China more significant. Not only this current oil and gas trading relationship. So. And Japan is not necessarily 100% pushing, but we are calculating as IEEJ the realistic statistics that possibly not only EV but plug-in hybrid together along with the e-fuel will make sense towards the energy transition as the economic-wise as well. So maybe the region, the Gulf countries as well as Japan can collaborate on creating those realistic policy or the standards towards the energy transition as well as the economic policy as well. So I came to a lot of places, but yeah.
Thank you.
That concludes my comments.
Thank you, Kana-san.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think that what is happening in the region is a good chance for Japan. Why? The economic diversification is something Japan is good at. We don't have energy resources. We imported it from the GCC countries, but using it, we diversified our economy and we developed our country out of World War II. And that is something we are very good at. And what I understand is that the GCC countries are now shifting the focus from the energy dependence into the, diversification. But the fundamental thing is that they need an economic driver to support the sustainable economic growth. And that is something we are very good at. And on top of that, we have some social issues like aging population and or other things. But I'm sure countries in GCC would face similar problem in coming decades. In that case, we would be a solution provider for that kind of issues. So, and on top of that, we are very good at, how to say it, we are still very good at advanced technology, like launching a rocket to the moon or the outer space, or the health, or the water. Those are the things that there's no room for mistake. And those, how to say, quality required elements is something we are good at. So I think this is a very good chance for Japan, I believe. Thank you.
Thanks, Kenisa.
Totally agree. I think Japan was, of course, the beacon of development in Asia. Japan was the country that started the economic development and pulled behind it all the rest of Asia. And in that process, they have learned a lot of lessons that can be learned here from them. And Japan is, of course, given what has been described in terms of their economic development and their status in the world economy, there is there's a lot of opportunity for Japan to play here in the Middle East and to help the Middle East with its economic transformation into different level, while at the same time cementing the relationship between both. There is a synergy. There is, of course, interdependence between Japan and the Middle East, and that has to be capitulated. But I think at the same time, the Japanese people are very gentle, very polite, and they don't like to push their policies, or they push their, if you like, agendas on the others. So it takes two to tango, as it were. The Middle East has also to go to Japan and to learn from the Japanese, and not just to wait for Japan to come here, but also we expect that Japan actually change its mode a little bit, because the competition is becoming much higher, whether it is from neighboring countries or also around the world. And the Middle East is going through quite an important strategic shift that is taking place at the economic level, but also at geopolitical level. And you mentioned, geopolitics. Geopolitics is a nightmare for the region. How do you deal with all these shifts that are taking place? I don't think there is an answer, because I don't think there is a clear vision of where are these shifts are going. There are indications. We've seen that we're going through going towards a more multipolar world. We're seeing rise of certain powers, but what is that going to mean to the Middle East? What's it going to also mean to the world as a whole? And some of these shifts can be quite disruptive if not managed in the right way. And I think it's important for the Middle East and for countries like Japan, middle powers, economic powers, etc., but not necessarily a military power, to work together to make sure that these shifts don't hurt anybody, and that the shift is conducted peacefully rather than through conflicts and wars, which the world doesn't need that. So I think Japan, with its history, with its passive vision and peace and economic prosperity and hard-working people and work ethics, has a lot to offer. It just, are we ready to take some of that? And is Japan quick to promote itself? It's very shy in promoting itself, but it certainly has a lot of advantages that it can give to the region. And I think we both have to change a little bit. We have to learn more from you, and you've got to push us a little bit as well, and also, promote yourself a little bit more in terms of, explaining yourself to the Middle East. Because we don't understand much of the Japanese culture, despite the fact we love it. Yeah?
Thank you, Professor Baabood. We're getting close to the end of our time, but we have time for 2 more questions, and we'll take them together, or 3 questions. We'll take them all together, and then we'll go back to our panel.
I'll be really quick.
June Park,
Hi,
please.
my name is June Park. I'm a political economist. Do you need to see me? You can't see my face. I'm a visiting fellow here, and I have
Raise
a
your
question. I have a question for Sato Sensei. So, for the energy, first on the energy procurement, for the LNG long-term contracts, is Japan poised to acquire additional amounts from Qatar, and how is that shaping the Japanese energy mix into the future? So that's the first question. And for the FTA negotiations that you are going through, is there any discussion on tariff reduction on crude oil?
Great, thanks, June. And we'll go to the next question here at the front as well. We'll take them all together.
Question?
I'm Abdullah. I'm a long-time resident of Qatar. I'm basically a marketing person. I have this question for the panel. We were talking about energy security. There is no mention of Australia. Australia is one of the largest going to be exporter of oil and gas, and has got huge reserves. Now, they are already in discussions with Korea and China. So what is your situation now? How will you take it when they start, in a big way to export? And my second question, it is not a question. We were talking about how humble the Japanese people are. I had a recent experience. I have been to more than 40 countries, and I went to Japan recently, a couple of months back. The hospitality and the humbleness of Japanese people are par excellence. Let me also add here, I had an invitation for the Beethoven Symphony, but I preferred to come here to meet you people.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. And we have...
That's very...
Yes, thank you. And there was one more question. Was that it, or 2 questions? Perfect. Okay, let's go back to our audience. Perhaps now we start in reverse order with Professor Baabood. If you'd like to make any response to the 2 questions. There was an FTA question. There was a oil and gas question, FTA from June.
Yes.
If you'd like to address it or not. And there was a question on... Let's reflect on the hospitality comment as well, having lived in Japan.
I can spend hours just talking about how wonderful the Japanese people and how much I'm enjoying being there. Yes, it's a different world, and I encourage you all to visit and to see. But just very quickly on the FTA. I think the GCC states have started, of course, they've signed a number of FTAs with a number of countries, and then the GCC itself had an issue internally, which we all know about, and conflicts within the organization. And now they have started to come back, and the GCC as an regional organization is trying to reinvigorate itself and trying to develop this kind of multilateral relations rather than bilateral, which of course will benefit the whole region. And they started negotiating with a number of countries. It was with the EU. They're talking to the UK as well, and the United States, but also India and South Korea and Japan, as well as many other countries. I don't know if they have the capacity to negotiate all of this within the GCC Secretariat, when we know that they are really small numbers of people who work there. It's not easy for them to go ahead, and I think with each country there are specific challenges, especially in petrochemicals, where the GCC region has developed huge capacity to export petrochemicals, And that's basically something they're facing with India, for example. And with the EU as well, was a major obstacle to the relationship. I think with Japan, the areas of conflicts are very limited, of trade conflicts or so on. I'm not aware of the exact areas that they are talking about, or if there is any particular conflict. But I think there is huge potential that relationship with Japan, Korea, and so on could go much faster than, say, with China or India, because of the fact that there is competition there within these groupings. So I'll stop here.
Thank you, Professor Baabood. Kenny-san.
Yes, on Australia, they are one of the key supplier of energy to Japan. Not only LNG, but also other critical minerals. And also they are one of the key partners of Japan in decarbonization. There is a plan to export carbon dioxide from Japan to Australia to sequestrate in Australia. The reason why I didn't mention Australia is, well, as a chief representative based in Dubai, I have to promote the business opportunity in GCC to Japan. So somewhat Australia is used as a kind of competitor of GCC. And geographically, Australia is much closer to Japan. However, in terms of the labor cost, they are very high. And so the all-in cost, including the transportation fee or others, then the economics might be somewhat better for GCC projects or countries. So that is something I'm advocating, that the business chance is still here in GCC. But we have to diversify the supplier. So Australia is one of the key supplier, and the GCC would be another key supplier, I believe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Kenny-san.
Thank you very much. Yes, so the other question was kindly covered by my colleague speakers. So I would like to answer to your question about the LNG from the Qatar. So it wasn't extended in 2021 due to the economic reason of the private company of Japan, as you may know. This procurement was based on the private company's decision, and that time it was before Ukraine crisis. So the gas price was not that high at those timing, and comparing to the other LNG market and also the demand from the Japanese side, the long-term agreement with Qatar wasn't economically idealistic for the Japanese company that was procuring or importing the LNG from Qatar. But for the future, it's quite difficult to predict, because Japan is under reviewing its nuclear power policy. So it's partially depending on how much Japan can revive or resume or reconstruct the power plant, the nuclear power plant, and also the demand is also decreasing. However, the gas is regarded as a transitional fuel as well at the same time. So the importance of gas is increasing. So it's all depending on the whole balances, whether the nuclear and also the demand within Japan, although the pricing, because Japan is also, have the plan to import the hydrogen. It's a little bit far ahead comparing to the gas, but all the balances will decide the policy, not the policy, but the decision of the private company as well.
Great, thank you, Kana-san. This has been a very rich and comprehensive presentation from each of our speakers. Great discussion. We really illuminated the various components of the relationship and their trajectory. And the conversation doesn't really end here. We at the Middle East Council have a number of partnerships in Asia, and particularly in Japan with Dr. Baabood, and we'll also be holding a panel in Tokyo in May amongst the number of activities we are doing with Japanese partners. We've invited colleagues from IEEJ, JBIC, and we look forward to continuing the conversation in the future. We've prepared a small reception for all of our guests outside, but before we go, please join me in thanking our speakers today. Thank you. Thank you. Ambassador Maeda and Tariq, can we please have a joint picture with everyone? Please.